Hello, everyone. Dr. Michelini here to talk to you today a little bit about tricksters. Tricksters are a character that shows up in tales from around the world. But in our class for this week, we're going to be focusing on tricksters from Native American or indigenous people groups from North America, okay? So the definition of trickster may change a little bit depending on the culture, but the specific one that we are looking at today is from Native American tribes, okay? I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see the slideshow here. And you see an image in the background here of coyote. Coyote is a very popular way in which it tricks in indigenous storytelling, okay? Tricksters are a character in indigenous storytelling that shows up as an animal, but they're really a mix of animal and human, almost like a cartoon character where it's speaking like a human, it acts like a human. It's like that for a trickster. Common depictions of trickster include, again, the coyote, a hare or like a rabbit, or a raven, okay? So that's where you might actually see them. But you might be thinking, okay, so it's a character, it's an animal, what is it exactly? In order to take a look at the definition of what this character is, who they are, we're going to rely on Anthony Farrington's definition from the University of Arkansas at Monticello. And he writes, is the embodiment of lawlessness and paradox. Okay, and I'm going to break this down for you a little bit. So basically, this trickster character in the story is not following the law, and there's sort of a combination of opposing traits. Okay, so they're very, very hard to nail down as good or evil. They're neither good nor evil. He is a divine buffoon, a hero who breaks taboos, a rebel, a coward, and a creator. So you can see in this definition, he's a buffoon, a hero, so he does have some positive traits, but he breaks taboo things, like things you shouldn't do. He's a rebel, he rebels. He's a coward, so he's not always like a hero. And he's a creator. So you can see already, it's very, very hard to define a trickster because they're slippery and they inhabit both spaces that might be familiar to us of like the good guy and the bad guy in Western culture. And so the trickster is neither of those, okay? We continue our definition here. Trickster helps establish social rules and he deliberately flouts them. So he might come up with some rules for society, but then not abide by them himself. He is commonly depicted as deceitful and humorous. So he might be very slippery, sort of deceiving people, but he's funny as well, so you can laugh at him. He is amoral rather than immoral. Immoral is somebody who is not acting in a moral way, right? They don't have morals specifically. And so a lot of times an immoral person is more depicted as an evil person. An amoral person has neither. They're kind of neutral. They're not bad or good. They're like technology. Technology can be used for good or evil, right? It's amoral, okay? And he has a voracious, appetite for food and sex, meaning that the trickster is representative of our more base instincts or needs as humans. So a lot of times, you know, when you feel like you're so hungry you could eat a horse, trickster might actually eat a horse, right? In the story, he is unable to control his bodily appetites, okay? In his traditional and mythic incarnations, he's almost always male. So this is usually a male coyote or whatever, you know, that's acting this way. As the supreme boundary crosser, trickster is always between classifications. So again, not just between good and evil, but between what is human and what is animal, between what is cultural, like cultural rules and norms, and what is natural, what we're born with. He continues his definition here. In his various and strikingly similar cultural guises, trickster is the self-indulgent clown who might dupe women into having sex with him. He steals food from his industrious neighbors who gathered the food. He is temporarily a woman. He dies and is reborn. Because he's funny, as expected, his tomfoolery frequently backfires. So he might be trying to do something, but he's unsuccessful. Like he juggles his eyes and loses them in a tree. He accidentally sleeps with his wife, who he's trying to sleep with somebody else, right? He drowns in his own feces. He uses his male parts to attack a chipmunk, who in turn bites off his male parts to a human size, okay? Further, Trickster is a cultural hero. In some narratives, he creates the earth. So you might be familiar in Western culture, we have the popular creation story, even if you're not religious, is Adam and Eve, right? In indigenous tribal cultures, Native American cultures, they have their own creation stories. And sometimes Trickster is part of that, where he might help create the earth or create animals. He might substantially alter their bodies. He steals tobacco from the gods. And in more recent times, trickster tales, these tales that involve tricksters, he might trick the white man, right? Okay, our last part of the definition here. Ultimately, trickster is disturbing, not because of his difference from humans, but because of his lack of difference. So when we read about him in stories, this character is often somebody that we want to distance, right? They're not the good guy. They're not the bad guy either, but they're causing mischief. They might do some good things, but it might be on accident. But in the end, he's a cultural construct, Farrington writes, right? As a purely cultural construct, the trickster's body is a cultural body, our body. He's representative of human ideals, of human desires, and certainly of our most base and bodily desires, right? So maybe the things that we wouldn't do because we are cultured and we do have self-control, right? We wouldn't eat all the food at the party because we know that that's not polite and we want to make sure there's enough for eat everything, right? So he's kind of like that. He can be childlike that way. He is always a part of us and he exists only to be interpreted. And when we interpret Trickster, we interpret ourselves because humans are the ones writing it, right? And so he is this symbol sort of human desires. Even though we often attempt to alienate ourselves from the trickster by making his body grotesque and indistinguishable, by making him an animal, right? Wherever we are, there's Trickster laughing at what we've become, okay? So in the end, is a mirror for parts of humanity. And that's what I want you to keep an eye out for in your Trickster stories that you read and listen to and see.